welcome to our annual State of the Industry presentation. I always forget how bright these lights are. They're really bright this year, probably glaring off of my glasses into your eyes, so apologies for that. My name is Carlotta Mast, and I am the Executive Director of Content and Insights at New Hope Network, and really so happy to have you here today for our annual State of the Industry presentation. I hope everyone's having fun. Yesterday, Thursday at Expo seemed to be busier than I've ever experienced it in my 10 years at New Hope Network, the company that puts on our natural product expos. And I think there were like 10 competing parties and fun things to do. And so I hope all of you had fun doing that. My eyes are a little red today, not because I was out, partying all night long, but because I woke up this morning. I've been here since Tuesday. We had this amazing Climate Day conference on Wednesday. We had an amazing business school yesterday on the trade show floor here in the Marriott in the Hilton, meeting all of these entrepreneurs. And this morning I was hit by this deep sense of hope and gratitude, which I can tell you that over the last few months, those really have not been the feelings I've been waking up to on a lot of days as I turn to Twitter and I try to figure out, like what's going to be the news of the day. And I felt so much hope because of this industry and the things that are happening to address big problems like climate change, which we talked about at the Climate Day conference, the innovation that is happening, the mission-driven entrepreneurs that are changing the way business is done in this industry, as well as the pioneers like White Wave and Lundberg Farm and Bob's Red Mill that have always been leading from this sense of purpose. And so I got a little teary, and I was really overcome by this sense of hope and gratitude. So I have gratitude that you're here today, that you are interested in the trends that are growing the industry, but not just the trends that are growing, sales and revenue and creating that kind of opportunity, but the trends that are really setting us up to have a big impact in the world, change the way business is done, and address some of the big challenges like global warming. And with that, I would like to introduce my co-presenters. Always so honored to be able to do this presentation with you. We've got Mary Ellen Molyneux, Managing Partner and President at Natural Marketing Institute, and I know she's always a favorite for folks to hear about what's happening from the consumer perspective that is driving so many of the trends we're talking about today, as well as Eric Pierce, my colleague and friend from New Hope Network, who is the Director of Business Insights and always has very thoughtful, actionable ideas that come out of our data to help you, whether you're an entrepreneur or someone at a large food company or a CPG company, grow your business and sustain the good work that you're doing. So we are live streaming this session, so welcome to those of you who are watching from your home or office. And once again, we have a team of Expo West bloggers led by Leah Seghetti of Momavation and the ShiftCon conference, live tweeting here in the front row, and we invite you to share your thoughts or ask questions via Twitter using the hashtag ExpoWestTrends. And we won't have time to take questions after our presentation. I have to go and lead a group of some middle-aged school children on the show floor right after our presentation, but we will be happy to answer your questions that you pose to us via Twitter, or we'd be happy to take your card or chat right after the presentation. And so let's get into the numbers. I wanted to first, before we start talking about trends, just provide a little bit of data and perspective on what's happening in the natural products industry. And I'm going to share with you today some preliminary estimates from Nutrition Business Journal, which are very preliminary. We will be sharing our final 2016 sales and growth estimates in a few months, but I wanted to give you just a sense of what kind of we're seeing for 2016. And so the U.S. natural products industry, which is all categories, food and beverage, functional food and beverage, natural and organic, of course, dietary supplements, and natural living categories, grew 7.7% to $195 billion in 2016, adding $14 billion in sales last year, new sales. And so to put the industry's growth in perspective, we're forecasting that sales will tip well into over $200 billion in 2017. And in 2007, just 10 years ago, US consumer sales totaled less than $100 billion. So over the last 10 years, even though we had a recession, a pretty deep recession, this industry doubled in size from less than $100 billion to more than $200 billion in the last decade. So that's pretty remarkable growth, and it's definitely what is fueling the energy and excitement that we are feeling here at Expo West. And so after decades of being on the fringes of culture and commerce, the natural and organic products industry has really arrived, and from my perspective has reached a tipping point. We have penetrated into the mainstream, and the mainstream increasingly wants to be us. Now, of course, focusing on purpose and mission is at the core of what this natural and organic products industry has been about from the very beginning. But this isn't always necessarily the case for the new players entering our ecosystem who are really attracted by all of the growth and the potential for basically making a lot of money because they see where the consumer is headed. So I really feel that the future health of our industry increasingly depends on how we effectively integrate the new voices along with their many pressures and priorities into this bigger discussion of how we improve the world and address global challenges such as climate change or food injustice using business and our companies. So that's a big part of what we'll be talking about today. If we look at the numbers by category, the natural and organic food and beverage category, again, outpaced the others from a growth perspective, growing at 8.5% to nearly $75 billion last year. And we certainly see that this industry is impacting and making its mark on the broader consumer packaged goods market. And as we're having that impact, we're creating a lot of positive influence on the future of CPG, as we heard just half an hour ago in the great presentation from Denise Morrison, the president and CEO of Campbell. They're seeing where the consumer is headed, they're seeing the impact our industry is having, and they are following our lead. Transparency is one of the most important principles for Campbell now in their march toward providing real food for life's moments. And so we're driving a lot of this change, and it's particularly measurable in the area of food and beverage. But all of our categories, supplements, functional foods and beverages, and natural living are all doing well, as this slide shows. Now, looking a little bit more at U.S. natural and organic food and beverage sales, as I noted, they grew 8.5% to just under $75 billion last year, according to NBJ's preliminary estimates. And growth was a bit down from 2015 last year, but again, this is still the largest and fastest growing category within our industry. And the money flowing into natural and organic food and beverage through investment and M&A deals, some from companies like Campbell, is certainly not slowing down, and it's definitely helping to drive growth in this category. Danone's $12 billion purchase of White Wave Foods, Hormel Foods' $286 million acquisition of Justin's, and Dr. Pepper Snapple's snap-up of Bai Beverages for $1.7 billion are but a few of the big deals that happened in 2016 and really changed the landscape for food and beverage. Functional foods and beverages grew an estimated 7.6% to reach just under $60 billion in sales last year. And it was, the success of functional beverage brands such as Bai and Kavita, which was purchased by Pepsi in 2016, that really helped to drive greater growth for the entire functional food and beverage category last year. Growth for this category was actually up compared to 2015, and we're seeing a lot of interesting innovation happen in the functional food and beverage category. Still lots of probiotic fortified products hitting the shelves out there. You'll see so many here at Expo West. They're going into shelf-stable and even frozen foods and beverages, and a lot of times the ingredient you're seeing is Ganadin's BC30. Farmhouse Cultures, with their probiotic kraut chips, they actually won our Nutra Award yesterday for their use of this probiotic ingredient. Other emerging functional ingredients that we're tracking at Expo West include metabolism-supporting MCT oils, which show up in No Brainers New Coffee Creamers, a product that I'm really personally excited about. I'm using it every day. L-theanine and lots of adaptogens for stress support and relief, and antioxidant-rich beetroot are just some of the emerging functional ingredients we're seeing on the show floor. Now, if we look at total food growth, or look at total natural, organic, and functional food sales and how that compares to total food sales, again, you see a picture of why this industry is so exciting and why it's attracting so much interest from entrepreneurs and investors and retailers and large food companies. And combined natural, organic, and functional food and beverage sales grew 8.1% to about $134 billion last year. And this growth rate is pretty phenomenal when compared to the 0.5% growth that the total food market experienced last year. Now, the total food market is still very, much larger. It's about a $770 billion industry compared to, $134 billion for natural, organic, and functional, but we're growing fast. And, the day is coming when, this industry, the natural, organic, and functional, won't be viewed as sort of niche categories. It will simply be viewed as the food and beverage industry, and that's already happening. Turning our focus to dietary supplements, 2016 was another good year for dietary supplements after a couple of hard years. 2015 was good, but 2013 and 2014 were difficult years for dietary supplements from a growth perspective. Category was still growing, but that growth had slowed. And last year, sales of dietary supplements grew 6.6% to just about $41 billion, adding just under $3 billion in new sales. And this was up from 5.9% growth in 2015. So this is, I think that this is good news for the dietary supplement industry, which had been seeing its growth slowing, in part due to some of the negative studies and negative media that have definitely hammered the dietary supplement industry as a whole over the last 5 years, and hit categories, these stalwart categories like multivitamins and omega-3s. And so to see the rebound is pretty exciting. Now, current supplement bright spots continue to be probiotics, probiotic supplements, which are expected to eclipse $2 billion in US sales this year. Sports nutrition is still very hot, and even niche but promising ingredients such as vitamin K are really helping to buoy those sales gains in the category as a whole. Herbs and botanicals, I like to pull this one out because for the last several years, herbs and botanicals have done really well, outpacing growth of the overall dietary supplement category. So sales of herbs and botanical supplements grew 7.7% to $7.5 billion last year. So it's higher growth than we're seeing in the category as a whole. And this is wonderful news for the industry, which wondered how some of the negative headlines and the investigation by the New York Attorney General into botanical products in early 2015 might impact the category, but it's really shrugging off that kind of bad news. And we're finding that herbs and botanicals are particularly popular with younger consumers, and a growing number of brands are really developing products and brand positioning to reach a millennial audience, which is helping the category. BioTerra Herbs and Oregon's Wild Harvest are two examples. And we'd love to see more of that as a way to bring millennials into the supplement category. Now, natural living sales. So natural living includes natural and organic household products, beauty products, even pet products. And this category as a whole also had another good year in 2016, grew 7.5% to $19 billion, according to NBJ preliminary estimates. And so this is a small category. It's the smallest of all the categories in our industry and that we track. But it's really proving increasingly influential as mainstream consumers begin to wake up to the understanding that what they put on their bodies and use in their homes, really matters and affects their overall health and wellness. And like in the food and beverage category, brand advocacy, education, and greater access to a growing range of innovative, efficacious, and safer products is fueling the growth of the natural living category. And finally, I wanted to share a looks at how sales are doing by channel. This is 2015 data. We don't yet have 2016 NBJ estimates for sales by channel. But you know, this really shows that once again, our products are available everywhere, and the mass and internet channels are really dominating, growing at the fastest pace, and also really proving to be very influential to this industry. In 2015, 57% of total US natural and organic product sales were rung up in the mass market, compared to 29% in natural and 14% into direct-to-consumer channels, which includes internet, multi-level marketing, practitioner, farmers markets. And not surprisingly, the fastest growing sales channel was the e-commerce internet channel, growing 14.7% to about $5.1 billion in 2015. And e-commerce companies such as Amazon and Thrive Market are working hard to transition more natural and organic product sales to the internet. And so with that, we're going to shift focus and talk about some macro forces that are really driving many of the trends we're going to talk about today. And our macro forces come from the 2017 Next Forecast, which is a strategic report created in partnership between New Hope and Sterling Rice Group. And the Next Forecast is designed to identify the products, people, trends, macro forces, cultural forces that will shape and create the greatest opportunities for tomorrow. And this is how we kind of organize our trends, or our macro forces, by some cultural forces. There's the cultural awakening, tech enablers, modern life. So it gives you a sense of the many macro forces that we track, and we'll just talk about 3 of those today and the many trends that follow underneath that. So our first trend is something that we call consciousness rising. Our first macro force is consciousness rising. And fueled by growing consumer demand for purpose-driven products and the emergence of socially minded entrepreneurs driven to change the world, conscious business practices is defining what businesses can look like in the future. And listed to the right are the trends and opportunities associated with the consciousness rising macro force, and we're going to talk about 3 of those trends today. The purposeful brand, this is my favorite trend, I think, within all of natural products, but this is really, we see this come alive at Expo West. There was a company, a kombucha company here in the Marriott that has a product that's positioned to help educate people on the plight of rescue animals, pictures of rescue dogs right on the bottle, dogs that are up for adoption. I'd never seen anything like it. So that's certainly a purposeful brand. And aligning with a social cause can deepen a company's ethical roots. And the closer that cause is to the heart of the business, lasting the impression. And these are just 4 examples of companies that are great examples, like Kombucha Dog, of very purposeful companies. You've got Numi Tea. They've been at the heart of allowing their mission to drive new product development and the work that they do in the world to improve the lives of the people who produce the ingredients for their products. Love the Wild, they were our Pitch Slam winner yesterday, and they're on a mission to preserve our waterways through responsible aquaculture, and doing that with these delicious fish kits that make it really easy to prepare frozen fish in your home in a delicious way. Soulful Project, Denise Morrison talked about this. This was born out of an idea that 4 Campbell's employees had for creating a give back program that would allow them to get their products into the hands of more people who really need them. And so these ideas are not just coming out of the small companies, they're coming out of the big companies as well. And another that I just love is the egg company Vital Farms. They are investing in a gender detection technology that it hopes can save male chicks from being killed in an effort to stop one of the egg industry's most brutal practices. The second trend within the consciousness rising macro force is something we call lean, green, and waste stream. And consciousness can manifest itself in many ways throughout the value chain, through ethical sourcing, triple bottom lines, charitable donations, but it can also be injected into the very engineering and production of actual goods, and these are some good examples. So we've got my favorite here is Maple Guild. This is a maple syrup company. They have many other types of products, maple vinegar, maple tahini, very innovative. But they're also looking at how they can improve kind of lives throughout their entire production process. So they were able to take 16 acres of sugar bush that would have been otherwise used for logging. They turned that into the trees that they use to tap for their products. But they also took an abandoned factory in their hometown and converted that to being able to produce all of their maple products. So they created all of these jobs in a community that was really suffering. And they're doing it in a way that is, I think, creating this awesome story around Made in America, creating new jobs, and also creating very purposeful products. These are some other examples. Regrain bars, I'm sure you've heard of. They're actually taking waste from the beer production process and pairing it with these really great ingredients to create a whole new line of nutrition bars from beer waste. The collaboration economy, our third trend within the consciousness rising macro force. And the natural products industry comprises many outstanding companies and individuals, but it's the collaboration between these organizations, and even with organizations outside of the industry that pave the good food future. And Good Spread is a great example of this. They work with a nonprofit called Mana, which makes a peanut butter-based, ready-to-use therapeutic food that's fortified with milk powder and essential vitamins to help children suffering from malnutrition. And so Good Spread, which uses Mana's production facility, developed a buy one, give one marketing model for its peanut butter that's resulted in the donation of more than 90,000 packets of Mana to children in need all around the world. Further is in the natural living category, and they actually repurpose grease waste from local restaurants to create the glycerin byproduct that goes into their soaps. And then they go ahead and restaurants where they collect that grease uses those further products in their restaurants. And as another example, Thrive Tribe, they have a really interesting collaboration that they're doing with the supplement company Megafood. So they've launched this line of paleo bars that include nutritional boosts from Megafood for all of these different positionings. And this one includes the daily energy boost from Megafood, which has beetroot, B12, ashwagandha. And so I think it's a really interesting partnership between a food company and a supplement company to create a new functional bar. And with full transparency, I created a paleo snack company, Holy Bites, which was sold to 1908 brands. I'm not involved with them anymore. And that then became Thrive Tribe, which is doing all this awesome collaboration work. But I've never seen that kind of collaboration between food and supplements, so wanted to share that example. And with that, I will pass it on to you, Mary Ellen.
Great. Thank you very much. And before I get started and continue some consumer thoughts on consciousness rising, I just want to thank New Hope Network for inviting NMI to be part of the panel today. I will be available for questions afterwards. I'm down on the floor or just outside, and there's also 3 other NMI consultants here. They'll be by the door also. So let's talk a little bit about the why behind all of this and how consumers are really thinking about it. And one of the things that we're really seeing is that the relationship between sustainability initiatives and the strength of brand value is definitely increasing, and it indicates that we're now having positive impact and return on investment. So as consumers today, we live in an age where consumers are relating to brands in a much newer and deeper ways. They're asking more questions. They want to know more about the importance of health, sustainability, and social responsibility from brands, because all of that information is becoming important. And as you're going to see, and you actually see it in this first chart today, I'm going to be presenting a lot of general population numbers. I will talk about the leader groups, low-cost consumers, you've heard of them before. That's that 20% of the population that are really the first in, they're the early adopters, they are the leaders and influencers of the rest of the population. But what I want you to notice as I go through my charts today is that the general population has very strong feelings towards the things that we have been promoting in this industry for a long time. So for example, as you see here, more than half the population, 52%, say that they'll usually buy products from companies whose values are most like my own. Now that's driven by, on the high side, by millennials at 59%, and they're, compared to all older generations, much more involved because they've grown up with it. They're more likely to do business with companies that talk about charitable efforts, and they're talking about sustainability, and it highlights this opportunity for corporate transparency because companies that do good are also able to make sure that, and as they make sure that they relate their cultural, their social, their environmental initiatives very clearly and consistently to the consumer, when they do that, they're going to ensure a positive return on that investment. So we're measuring this in many different ways, and there are many companies that are doing it well. I'll talk about a couple of them as I go through today. And consumers are definitely interested in what you're doing as corporations and what type of social efforts you're making. So what you see on the slide now are just a few from a list of 21 different health, environmental, political, social, economic initiatives that we measure. So how interested are they? And again, this is general population numbers. So 66% are interested in jobs. That's not unusual in our political climate or in the economic climate, and certainly with media noise. We pay attention to jobs and jobs in the USA, and I'll address that in another way as we go through the day. But look at some of the other things that are very strong here. First, the whole measurement of all of these issues in the general population is at almost 4 out of 10 or higher. Look at humane treatment of animals or access to clean water. And in fact, since 2012, those issues are growing dramatically. There's a lot of interest from consumers in access, what corporations are doing to provide access to clean water. 28% growth just in the last few years in interest in this, or 24% growth in humane treatment. The two things that you see on the chart that have negative growth at -5%, using less packaging or reducing energy consumption, doesn't necessarily mean that consumers are not interested in those anymore. It really means that they just expect it. They become a cost of entry, and consumers expect you to be providing those things in the products that you provide to them. And when you do, when companies keep sustainability as a focus and they're viewed as being more positive, and all of this across the last 7 years has increased, as I said, that return on investment, because we see here, when you're mindful and they know it, they understand what you're doing, they're more likely to try your products, to buy them repeatedly, to tell their friends about them, and to be less concerned about the price of your product. And all of these measures have increased in the positive way over the last 7 years. So there's an opportunity here to increase value in a very meaningful way with consumers. We need to be believable. We need to be transparent. We need to be honest in our messaging. We need to be progressive. We need to show progress in what we're doing in all of these efforts, social, environmental, health, et cetera. Consumers do not expect us to be perfect. They are coming along with us on this path, and engaging them is a whole new opportunity at every level of the business, whether you are a retailer or a brand or even an ingredient manufacturer. There's many ways to keep consumers coming with you. And while consumers want more corporate action, they don't always believe that corporations are taking the lead. So for example, we ask them, who do you believe are the current leaders, and who do you believe should be doing more within those areas of issues that we're talking about? So you see those who they believe to be current leaders are in the green, and those that they think should be doing more are in the blue. Now, it's pretty obvious. Those that they think are currently doing the most are individuals, nonprofit organizations, and volunteer groups. Not surprising, but consumers really are doing more. Some of the things that we're measuring really do show increases in consumers doing more recycling, doing more composting, all kinds of things that they're making efforts on. But when we ask them the question of who should be doing more, they don't necessarily let themselves off the hook. 50% say, I should be doing more. But they also look at the very high numbers for the US government and for corporations. Almost 2/3 expect the government to be doing more, and more than half want corporations to be doing more. They are watching you. They want to be part of what you're doing. There's new opportunities to engage consumers in your efforts, and there's really some good messaging going on around that. If you've seen the recent Starbucks ad, I'll give a shout out to them. A great tone in that ad, but more importantly, it's engaging and it's inclusive. It's not we did this, we're doing this. It's we with our customers are doing this, and we're making progress, and the tone is great. It's not we're done, it's we're continuing, come with us, and they're trying to really engage their consumers to come on this journey with them as they try to improve on what they're doing. And those impacts, that when you do those things, it can definitely impact the bottom line. This is the percentage of the general population, again, willing to pay 10% more for food and beverage products manufactured by companies that pay their workers fairly, support causes they believe in, provide safe working environments, they have public goals, or they're fighting global warming. And so they're looking at companies as leaders, and they are willing to spend more. So we're seeing this in a few different ways today in the measures I'm presenting. When you look at the leader group, the low-cost consumers, these consumers are almost twice as likely to be willing to pay 10% more. And we're going to see some more as we go along.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Thanks, Carlotta. So we're talking right now about the consciousness rising, right? Carlotta showed us examples of companies in this industry who are demonstrating their increased awareness, consciousness, and responsible action in the marketplace. And we see through Mary Ellen's data that consumers are responding. They're demanding more of us. I think it's really important at this point in time to recognize that the marketplace is shifting, right? The marketplace dynamics and what's expected of our brands is shifting. Many of yesterday's brands are in decline. Many of today's brands look very different than they did before. Today's consumers are more aware, more conscious, and responsible themselves. Your business partners and your competitors as well are more conscious, responsible, and aware. The marketplace and the consumer expectations in the marketplace of us, of our brands, of our retailers, are beginning to shift, right? Businesses now operate in an environment of diminished trust, increased consumer awareness, increased access to information and transparency. And all of this, among other things, are putting increased pressures on our business to respond and to shift our models. Today's consumers, if you will, demand from us authenticity. They demand from us transparency, proactivity, engagement, and connection. When I talk about proactivity, I'm going to talk about this idea of being ahead, right? Getting out ahead of consumers and not necessarily waiting for consumers to demand things explicitly of us, but instead to be a conscious business and to be responsible and thinking ahead about what we need to do and then making that part of our marketing and how we drive ourselves forward in the marketplace. Today's consumers trust. Today's consumers are more likely to trust and put their faith in the companies that demonstrate character, the companies that demonstrate clear values, the companies that are willing to take a little bit of a risk by leading proactively in the marketplace based on the values that they have for themselves and for their businesses. Consumers today demand leadership, right? Today's conscious, more engaged consumer is extending us an invitation. Our industry is ready to respond to that too. State our values, identify our values, be transparent, and they're extending us an invitation to do this. To extend this invitation to us means show us your values, right? Stand for something, and we're ready to follow. To be authentic, be consistent, and act consistently in the marketplace based on them. Mary Ellen's data showed us pretty explicitly that consumers are now buying based on values. They're buying brands with values that are similar to their own. They're more willing to try, to buy, to promote, and to pay more for the brands that they believe are taking socially and environmentally responsible action in the marketplace. Yet, consumers feel our brands aren't doing enough. Remember that slide from Mary Ellen's data? Consumers feel like they're the one taking the action and and that our brands are not yet responding. Consumers expect us, I believe, I believe the transition that we're experiencing in the marketplace is that consumers are beginning to expect us to run responsible businesses. They want to hear from us, and they want to understand what it is we're doing in the market and how we're leading, because they want to follow, but they want to follow brands that stand for something in the marketplace. Today's consumers are beginning to value our leadership. They're going to be demanding it from us before too long. I think what this means in the marketplace is that it is time. It's time for us to lead. Increasingly, it appears that the marketplace is rewarding those who act proactively in the marketplace. It's rewarding those who lead with values and purpose. Think about the brands that Carlotta showed us earlier, right? The discussion in the industry, I want to talk a little bit about a discussion in the industry about a common point of tension for many brands. It's an understandable one, but it's an important one to shine a light on and think about. Many brands, and many brands within this industry, express their commitment, their honest and genuine commitment to look after the welfare of animals, or maybe it's to look after the environment, or to engage in socially responsible action. At the same time, these brands blame consumers. They blame consumers for their lack of progress because they say, we're in the business, ultimately, of producing exactly what consumers are going to buy. They're listening to consumer demand and saying, I can really only afford to produce what consumers are demanding explicitly of us in the marketplace. That, I believe, is the mentality that has gotten us to the place that we are today, which is not necessarily always a great place when we think about where we are socially and environmentally. While I understand the very obvious challenge and the pressures and the challenges of running a business, I also respectfully disagree. I think many of us respectfully disagree with this line of thinking. Yes, we absolutely, without a doubt, have a responsibility to run profitable businesses. We have a responsibility to our stakeholders, our shareholders, our communities, to our consumers, and to our business partners to run responsible businesses. Yet, as industry experts, as experts of industry, it is our responsibility to lead. Don't be mistaken. It is our responsibility to lead, not the consumers. We cannot wait for the consumer to explicitly demand responsible supply chain practices. We can't wait for consumers to explicitly demand responsible packaging decisions. We can't wait for consumers, because waiting for consumers somehow shifts the blame. It suggests that consumers should be expert in our trade. We have to be out. We are the only ones who can make those responsible decisions about how we source our products and what we bring to market and how we go about doing that. It is our responsibility to lead conscious, aware businesses. It is our responsibility to make the responsible decision in the marketplace. As experts of industry, it is our responsibility to lead on behalf of consumers. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. It takes some risks. It takes getting out there in front. At the same time, I think the patterns we're showing you is that consumers are ready for it. Your competitors are already beginning to do it. It's going to require personal growth. It's going to require the growth of our businesses. But the marketplace is beginning to ask for it. And I believe that those who get out in front and lead will have the opportunity to differentiate their brands and build loyalty in the marketplace. And ultimately, I do believe they will be rewarded for it. So here's what you should do in thinking about this. If you want to take on the challenge of beginning to get out there and lead, we had a really great day, Carlotta mentioned it, the Climate Day. On Wednesday, we kicked off Expo with the Climate Day by asking companies to make a commitment to major climate issues that we think is going to put us on a path towards one day reversing global climate change and using brands to do that. If you decide you want to put yourself on a path, consider these kinds of things that you can do, right? Identify the values that are important to your business. Make them part of your company culture, right? Just like values might guide your own decisions in life, make sure that these values that are important to you guide your business decision-making in your business. Explore all aspects of your business. Figure out where these values can come to life. Maybe it's in your supply chain decision-making. Maybe it's in the agriculture that grows the products that you buy, or manufacturing, or transportation, or energy use, packaging. There's all sorts of places where you can look within your organization to see, how can my commitments, how can my values come through in my products? Then in the process, as Mary Ellen talked about, begin to engage consumers, really reach out to them and help them understand what it is that you're doing, because I do believe that consumers are demanding this of us, and we can differentiate our brands in the marketplace. Tell your story, engage your consumer, engage your employees, and then continue to evolve. Continue to move down that path, remain flexible and authentic to the things that are most important to you. And I believe there's real opportunity in the marketplace by following this path. Carlotta.
Thank you, Eric. So appreciated hearing from both of you, Mary Ellen, as a recovering perfectionist. I loved hearing that your data showing that consumers don't expect our brands to be perfect, but they expect to see progress. And couldn't agree more with this idea of it's time to lead. And it's on this issue that I think we have the greatest opportunity to lead. We have a moral imperative to lead, but I think your data that you showed at Climate Day can really show that this could be something that helps to also grow our industry. So our next macro force is something that we call a climate of change. And as we explored during our Climate Day conference on Wednesday, food and agriculture enter climate change discussions as victim of changing supply chains, as villain, as being contributing greatly to global warming, as well as to the solution to the problem, just in time to feed an exponentially growing population. It was really exciting to see Paul Hawkins share Project Drawdown's latest research on the top 20 solutions to global warming. 8 of them are food and agriculture-based. That is amazingly exciting. His solutions are things that we can do as an industry, that we can do as companies and individuals today to begin having an impact on global warming. So I want to talk about 3 trends that are connected to this idea of the climate of change. And this first one, the plant revolution, also connects to one of the top solutions that Project Drawdown has identified to global warming. And their number 4 solution is eat a plant-rich diet. That comes after just the number 3 solution is reduce food waste. And the plant revolution is one of our hottest trends in this industry. And whether it's for heart health, climate health, ecological efficiency, or animal welfare, plants are fast becoming man's best friend and providing consumers with more delicious and healthy alternatives for eating fewer animal products. This is no longer about vegans and vegetarians. The offerings that our industry are providing to the marketplace are making it really easy, delicious, convenient to eat fewer animal products. And these are just 4 of my favorite brands some of my favorite brands that are doing this. Kite Hill is changing the plant-based dairy category more than almost any other brand, and it's doing so because its top leadership believes there is a moral imperative to move consumers to more plant-based offerings. They're not waiting for all consumers to get there. They are innovating products that are so amazing. Whether you have ever had a vegan or vegetarian product, you will love their products, and then all of a sudden you're eating fewer animal products. Myrtle Greens is a really interesting new food company, and they're taking on the booming jerky category with their new vegan jerkies made with non-GMO soy base. And vegan jerky it's been in our industry for a long time, was an incredibly niche product, probably one that my kids might say were those hippie products. They've been in our industry for a long time, but we're now seeing all of this new opportunity because of things like the plant revolution and the growing interest in jerky-type products. Good Karma Dairy-Free Yogurt, another awesome company. They have these new dairy-free yogurts that are nutritious, they're free of all major allergens, and they're a great example of snacking innovation. And along with being allergen-free, they use it's a flax-based product, which is a really beneficial cover crop. So it's also got this amazing positive agricultural story. So another awesome brand is part of the plant revolution. And Seymour IC Pasta is bringing mineral-rich sea veggies that require 0 fresh water, 0 arable land, no pesticides, no fertilizers to consumers' plates with their sea vegetable pasta line. So these are all amazing plant revolution brands. The climate change supply chain, another interesting trend within the climate of change macro force. And as climate shift and impact ingredient supply networks across the globe, brands are faced with both a challenge and an opportunity to innovate. And these are 4 companies that are doing just that. They're not just sort of wringing their hands and facing the impact climate change is having on their supply chains. They're actually they're using innovation and new technologies to take those challenges and turn them into opportunities. Treehouse Almonds, they're one of the largest almond growers in California and a supplier for popular natural brands such as Califia Farms. And they utilize a number of energy and resource-efficient technologies to reduce waste and water use for one of our industries and the food industry's most popular and climate impact ingredients, almonds. Aura Organics, so maybe some of you saw this company on Shark Tank recently. They make sustainable plant-based supplements. And one that I'm so interested in is their It's Nothing Fishy Here supplement. It packs an impressive 600 milligrams of DHA, all from non-fish sources, and it's in a pineapple-flavored spray. So fish oil is one, in the fish oil industry is one that is greatly impacted by climate change. And here's a company that is figuring out how to supply DHA from non-fish sources using this new innovation. Really exciting. Anne-Marie Borland is a European beauty brand, and they use all plant extracts from certified organic farms, and they use careful stewardship of wild plants and raw materials to harvest the ingredients for their line of personal care and beauty products. They also support numerous fair trade projects and employ ecologically responsible cultivation methods and environmental projects all around the world. So a really interesting personal care brand that is taking challenges to its supply chain and turning it into opportunities to differentiate on the store shelf. And one of my favorite new companies, this little tin, that tin has enough powdered tea in it for 60 cups of tea. So they're taking on the tea category, very impacted by climate change, and they're bringing this salt shaker-like packaging, which is reusable, recyclable, and making it really easy to bring your tea with you without the waste of tea bags or any of that. So another awesome example of innovation in this category. And finally, the climate-friendly products movement. This is one where these companies, again, are proving that they can lead. And as consumers really, grasp onto the connection between agriculture and climate change, it's going to become all the more critical that products distinguish themselves as climate friendly. Lotus Foods they were at our Climate Day conference. They actually stood up and made more commitments. They're a company that Paul Hawken calls out as being one of the most climate-friendly food companies in the world because of their use of rice intensification, system of rice intensification, which is one of the most climate-friendly ways to grow rice, which is a staple around the globe. You've got Oregon's Wild Harvest. They are a biodynamic supplement company. So nothing could be more climate-friendly than biodynamic agriculture. And they use biodynamic practices to grow all of their herbal tonics. Really cool millennial positioning, really cool biodynamic company in the supplement category. And Honest Kitchen, interesting pet company. So they have a new product called Nice Mussels. So those are freeze-dried green and blue mussels, one ingredient. And mussels are rated by the Monterey Bay Sea Watch program as one of the most sustainable seafood products in the world. So we're even seeing this climate-friendly foods movement move into the pet category. And of course, I had to put an insect-based product up there. We're still seeing innovation in the insect-based food area, and Biddy Foods is a great company, and they're really betting on the climate kindness of insects and the growing appeal that can have with eco-conscious consumers with their growing line of cricket flour-based products.
So as we continue to think about consumers and this climate of change, I wanted to just talk about just some of the things and how the population really feels about this and how far out are they? So what are they really doing? And we saw before that they were really interested in keeping jobs in the U.S. and so forth, and they're concerned about things that are close to them, as you see here. The first effect from the consumers that we call the laggards, the unconcerns, they're concerned about what goes on me or into me, what goes on my body, and they are concerned about their family. But as we look to the next group, or the groups that are more towards the middle, the sustainable mainstream, conventionals are very practical. They're also very community-minded, and they are as far out as the community because they're getting involved now in sustainable issues there and wanting to protect their communities and make their communities better. And as we think about the other two segments within that sustainable mainstream, drifters and naturalites, these consumers are strivers. They're concerned about health. There are a lot of millennials within the drifters, But they're firmly out. Both of these groups are firmly out to the country. Now, when they do that, they relate to world issues on a selective basis. They're, for example, concerned about water access and child labor, and is the leader group, the low-cost consumers, that 20% of the population that are all the way out, firmly concerned about world issues. They're looking at fair labor, about waste, about water, about energy, feeding the world. These consumers are very educated and wanting to do more as much as they can. But what we see with consumers is this preference for sustainable products is growing. And it's not growing dramatically. I'm going to show you some numbers that may be a little bit scary, but I want you to kind of get the context of them today. So since 2007, 48% at that time were interested in products that were manufactured in a sustainable manner. That's now 58% today. But look at the pattern of growth. You know, we had some high growth in 2008, right before the recession, and we didn't drop off during the recession. That's important. We really saw that again with organic and other things that are part of the sustainable movement. The consumers really didn't move away from it. They actually stayed involved, and now we're seeing some new initial growth. We're up from in 2013, and we're back up to 58%. So we're seeing some things that really are equating to growth in the marketplace, and it also equates here to consumer interest in green versions across many categories. And I wanted to note that this is top box interest. So that's important because these are the consumers that are very interested. They are most likely to buy. And as we look at the categories, again, remember that this is general population interest. So at 41% top box for foods, that's not surprising. That's really where the movement began within food and beverage categories. But look at pets and disposable diapers and even personal care products. You know, very strong, new interest, a lot of new interest within pet products. They're growing healthy versions across channels. And disposable diapers. I mean, one of the drivers of consumer purchase is convenience. And consumers want the convenience of disposable diapers. They just want them to also be eco-friendly. And when we look at personal care down to beverages here, again, at 31 to 35%, still very high interest in green versions of all of these categories. And still what you see even more importantly here is high growth in this interest. So since 2012, we're actually seeing 51% growth in interest in eco-friendly disposable diapers. And look at 27% in growth in interest in eco-friendly home fragrances. A lot of initiatives happening within home fragrances and fragrance within personal care that you're going to be hearing more and more about in the next few years. A lot of companies talking about the use of essential oils in home fragrances, but you're going to hear more about the issue of fragrances as we go through. There's a couple things that are flat here. So notice the 2 and the 1% growth only on household paper and laundry. I believe that the reason that that is not growing as strong as we are in other categories is the need for innovation and the need for better efficacy. We hear that all the time from consumers as we do research in those categories. So that's an area that really needs some good improvement and probably a little bit more work than some of the rest. But as consumers are looking for sustainable goods, they really want help. They want a label that ensures for them that these products are safe. So 50% of the general population say, I would trust a product sustainability scoring system that's offered by a respected national retailer. So we obviously have a big retail opportunity here to be able to talk about that. And as you look certainly at millennials and Gen X here, they're even higher. They're higher than the older generations. But not only do they want scoring, they really want a little bit more too. You know, they have high interest and would like to see a product label that conveys information about safety, environmental impact, and performance. Give me one label that says all three. Now, I know that that's consumerism. We want it all, we want it easy. They don't want to have to work to figure this all out. But it's also very high, so it's a huge opportunity that's here. And we've seen and heard this across qualitative and quantitative research in the last few years, and it's getting stronger. Make it easier for me. Give me one score, one seal. And we know as developers and marketers that that's not always possible to do, but this is what many consumers, more than 2/3 of the general population, very high across all generations, are desiring of that. And when they have that reassurance that the manufacturer is providing information about attributes that they're desiring, they're willing to pay 20% more. So we measured a lot of different attributes in this question, but I chose 2 today just to show some differences. And I think it's good to compare and contrast environment and sustainability percentages here. So made in the USA with the general population is 39% compared to only 27% that say that they would pay 20% more for those that are manufactured sustainably. A very high significant difference there, and it goes back to that issue of me and my body first, me first, where I need jobs. Made in the USA is about jobs. It's about being trusting of the sources of ingredients. And as you look down the generations here, it's a little bit higher with millennials and Gen X than the older, but pretty much the same across all of them. But where the big difference is in generations, is in sustainability. You see millennials are really leading and older consumers are really falling off on willingness to pay. One of the things I thought was clear here that was interesting to point out is that LOHAS line that I highlighted in green. So for both measures, at 51% and 49% willing to pay 20%, that's equal, statistically the same. So LOHAS consumers, the consumers that are leading the sustainable mainstream consumers, think about USA jobs, USA ingredients, and sustainable goods at the same level. And they're willing to spend more for both. So it presents an interesting phenomena that's happening here, so we understand the made in the USA, politically, economically driven. But while environment and sustainable may not be at the top of the list, it may not be at the top of the list of why we buy any category, what we do see is growth and significant growth in that level of interest in things being manufactured sustainably, and as well an increase in the understanding of terms themselves. So for many years, we as NMI were telling the world that, you know what, I'm sorry, but consumers just don't understand the difference here. They really don't. But I'm glad to report that we see an increase in the knowledge base, and we're seeing consumers really getting more involved for that reason. So let's listen to Eric for a little bit more on the idea.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. So what we're seeing here is that consumer concern and consumer willingness to engage with brands who act responsibly is strong and growing. What we're seeing from Carlotta's slides is that we're seeing more engagement from brands in our industry in engaging in that way. We're seeing brands begin to brand themselves and really call out in their marketing their engagement in socially or environmentally responsible action. Mary Ellen showed us with some of her data that there's a growth and a preference for sustainably manufactured products, that there's growing interest in environmentally friendly products in the marketplace. And as she just showed us, that there's a significant number of consumers who are willing to pay upwards of 20% more for products made in an environmentally sustainable way. I think it's interesting to think about how a marketplace evolves and our price expectations change. I think that this 20% is a really great number to see, upwards of a third or more of general consumers in some of our different segments being willing to pay that much more. I think if we looked back a few years ago, that number would have been smaller, right? We often have talked about how we got consumers buying organic suja-like juices for price points of $5 and $7 or more per serving. We got there by stepping consumers up. We got there by working consumers up along the process, by helping them along and resetting the expectation of what the real cost of some of these products in the marketplaces. And I really think that we're beginning to see the evolution of this marketplace where consumers are willing to pay 20% more, as we saw, but also that bar is going to potentially raise. We have to justify it, and we have to show consumers, but we also have to step them along. So I'm really excited about how we're seeing progress and consumers' willingness to reinvest some of their financial well-being into environmental well-being. This is encouraging. We've been here before, right? As an industry, we've faced environmental challenges before, and we've rallied as industry, broader than just our industry, behind some major issues, and we've made progress. Think about recycling and where we were 10 years, 15 years ago, 20 years ago with recycling. We've made real progress because we've rallied behind it. And as industry, we put a lot of effort into making sure our products and our packaging would be recyclable. Think about the ozone layer or acid rain or some of these things that I won't say are solved, but we've definitely made progress. The challenge is that today's environmental issues are bigger. Today's environmental pressures are stronger. Some say we've got 7 years, maybe 10 years to make a significant dent in the damage that we're causing to the environment. And if we're going to give our children and our grandchildren the climate that we've become accustomed to, if we don't make serious progress in the next 7 to 10 years, we are basically setting up our climate for dramatic change for centuries to come. On these issues that we solved, right? We talked a little bit about recycling and other things. The things that we've done great, that we've had huge successes in the past, have come in a huge part because of activists and industry, because industry made it a priority to try and tackle some of these issues. They've made it a priority to lead and to be out on front. Historically, however, we've kind of relegated the consumer to small actions. We've got consumers engaged. Consumers, Mary Ellen showed us in the first chapters that consumers are willing to engage. And they have, but we've kind of given them small things to do, and I think we need to change that. I wrote this slide and I said Mother Earth is in danger, and I realized that actually Mother Earth isn't in danger, just our use of it is. Our climate, the way we expect to live on this earth, that's what's in danger. Our industry will need to play a role again as we look to mitigate climate change, as we look to potentially putting ourselves on a path towards resolving this issue or reversing climate change. But in order to do that, we need to do something different this time. Taking 20 years to get to the point where we are with recycling is not going to work going forward. We need to do something different. And I think what we need to do differently is we need to engage consumers. We need to use our brands as a catalyst for amplifying and accelerating our investments in fighting against climate change by channeling the spending power of the US consumer, of the world consumer. Imagine what we can do if we begin to tap into the spending power in our industries and funnel that into the brands that are making the most and the biggest commitments and the significant progress in helping us fight against climate change. We need to engage consumers. And I'm not just talking about what we've done in the past. I'm not asking us to re-engage consumers the way we have in the past, like asking them to shut off their lights when they're not in the room or turn off the water when they're brushing their teeth, or giving them really difficult challenges like buying hybrid cars. That's a great solution and it has a big impact. And many of us have done it, but it is not practical for the average consumer to ask them to rebuild their life around public transportation or minimizing their commute or buying electric vehicles. What we need to do is we need to engage consumers in a way that funnels their purchasing power. We need to use commerce. We need to use this commerce as a way to amplify and accelerate the actions that our businesses take in the marketplace to begin to reverse climate change. The good news here is that packaged goods, consumer packaged goods, the very products that we grow, manufacture, and sell within this industry represents a powerful new entry point to solving climate change, to engaging consumers. Increasingly, consumers realize their purchasing power. Consumers, as we talked about, are empowered. They're empowered by transparency and access to information. Our millennials have grown up in an environment where recycling is commonplace. These climate concerns are more penetrated into millennials because they've grown up in that environment. It's now the time that we need to begin connecting environment to our brands and the brands of our actions to purchasing. It's time that we link the environmental responsibility of our brands to the stories that we tell consumers. It's time for us to offer up consumer packaged goods as a tangible, accessible, affordable entry point to engaging consumers in the fight against climate. It's time that we connect consumer awareness and environmental concern to consumerism. It's time that we connect this environmental concern to consumer action, and we can do that through our brands. Today, our brands and our products can act as a catalyst for change in accelerating our fight against climate change. $3 at a time, $5 at a time. Every trip to the grocery store can suddenly be an opportunity for a consumer to vote for the brands that are dedicating themselves to fighting against climate change. Our products need to represent this new entry point. Our branding needs to communicate the efforts that we're making to fight against climate change. Again, as I mentioned before, we have an opportunity to engage consumers. We have an opportunity to engage them in a meaningful dialogue. We have an opportunity to build loyalty by making commitments, by connecting those commitments and the follow-through within our business to our employees and to our consumers through our marketing, and by beginning to empower consumers to vote with their wallets at the grocery store for the brands that are working to make a difference. It's time. It's time for our brands to lead on climate. Carlotta.
Thank you, Eric. So our last macro force is called the flat earth, and this is going to provide some ideas for how we start to really connect with those consumers and bring them along on this journey. And an increasingly complex global food and ingredient supply chain means more food experimentation, but also the need for greater traceability and the rise of powerful new consumer influencers, those influencers who can help us connect with consumers in a new way and really bring them along. And again, these are some of the trends and opportunities associated with this macro force, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them. The world traveler. This is connected to another trend, the adventurous palate. And if you walk the show floor, you will see so many interesting new globally inspired flavors and products. And I think that a lot of it's driven by the fact that our earth is becoming flatter. People are traveling, millennials are traveling, and a lot of times they're turning into natural product entrepreneurs who turn those worldly experiences into businesses with passion and authenticity at their core. And their brands are really to consumers' increasingly adventurous palates. These are 4 brands that were created by these globally inspired entrepreneurs. One of my favorite is Burma Love. It's a team of entrepreneurs in San Francisco who have family in Burma, and they've taken the fermented tea leaf salad that's so popular in Burma and turned it into this really wildly popular restaurant in San Francisco, and now they have a CPG product. And so it's just a great example of sort of this, how this world traveler trend is coming to life on our show floor, all the way to what we're seeing in the a personal care category with Alafia shea butter. So this is African shea butter, and it's used to inspire and fund these empowerment projects that the company has, which are created to help alleviate poverty and encourage gender equality in the communities where they source their ingredients. So we're seeing this world traveler trend in food and beverage, but all the way in personal care as well. So putting a face on our suppliers, as Denise Morrison talked about, and as we have talked about for many years in these presentations, the desire for transparency is really becoming table stakes, I think, in the CPG industry. And the most progressive companies don't just tell a story about their products or trace the ingredients, but rather they start this entire dialogue about the possibility of a better food system. One of my favorite new companies here at Expo West this year is Wise Monkey. And by commercializing the use of coffee leaf to make these delicious tea infusions, and coffee leaf tends to be something that's not ever used in, it comes with coffee production, but it hasn't been used for products yet. But they've created these new teas made out of coffee leaf, and now they're able to create stable year-round employment for coffee farming communities. And the company's story of inspiring a worldwide change in coffee farming and creating long-term value for coffee farmers around the globe is this amazing story. And go check out their booth. I've never seen a company do a better job of telling that kind of story, detailed story on their packaging. On the inside of the box, under the box, everything is used to tell this story. So a really cool company. Another is Soul Simple. So they have these sun-ripened and solar-dried additive-free snacks. They're really delicious. But they have an awesome sourcing story about how they get their products and work with women in Nicaragua to source the ingredients for their fruit snacks. And again, they use their packaging as a really great way of telling that story, but also inspiring us to think about sourcing in a whole new way. Open Farm, they are a pet food company, and they've added a level of traceability and transparency to the pet food category, which has been pretty opaque for decades, that is really inspiring to me. And finally, the new influencers. When it comes to shaping consumer attitudes, habits, and loyalties, when it comes to telling the kinds of stories that we've been talking about today that go beyond some of the traditional marketing that we've done, traditional media is certainly losing, fighting a losing battle to these new forces that are powered by word of mouth and amplified through countless technological advances and consumer hunger for authentic voices and visions. I had introduced Leah before. She has her ShiftCon conference, and she's created this community of really influential, mission-driven bloggers who are changing the way consumers think about the products that they buy for themselves and for their families. Vega is a company, this vegan supplement company. They really prioritize these new influencers. They've shifted a lot of their marketing away from traditional marketing spend to influencer-based marketing because they really value those one-on-one connections with consumers that they can have through these new mission-driven influencers. There's all kinds of influencers. One of my favorites is this nonprofit group that was born out of our own industry called Protect Our Breasts. We have them here in the green scarves. Cynthia Barstow and her team of advocates who are educating young girls and women about the importance of eliminating endocrine disruptors from the products that they buy, the everyday personal care and household products. And they're having this huge impact, and they're then partnering with other influencers such as the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics and the Environmental Group and retailers in our industry to really reach those consumers and get people thinking differently about the products that they buy. And another company that is just one of my very favorite, I think they're a great example of how a brand can be an influencer, Back to the Roots. And they're one of the most forward-thinking brands in our industry, and that has helped them by being these authentic entrepreneurs who are trying to undo food. They've been able to attract money from companies such as Campbell's. Denise Morrison mentioned investing in them, to people like Michael Pollan and Dan Barber, these good food advocates. And they're also, they've been able to successfully take on everything from the cereal industry to the New York City school system, which recently replaced some of Kellogg's cereal that it was serving in their school breakfast program to their biodynamic organic cereal. So this is a company that is influencing industry. They're now influencing kids in the largest school system in the country, and by doing all of that, they're landing some of the best press, including a recent story in the New York Times on their school food program. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mary Ellen.
And I chose to end my part of the session this afternoon on influences. So what's influencing consumers as they make their choices? So this is top 2 box influence on their purchase of healthy and natural products. You see a very long list here. And we see that some consumers are more engaged than others, more influenced than others. And the same 3 things, package label, physicians, friends, and relatives, have stayed at the top for quite a while. Package label is extremely important. And when we look at just all these influences as a whole, we see that leader group, the LOHAS consumers, they are more influenced by all of them, but they are also the influencers. So they are the grassroots brand champions that you want to make sure that you're engaging. And we need that. We need to use all of these to engage the sustainable mainstream in a stronger way and bring them into our brands and into our stores to buy more. And when we look at some of these top influencers, one of the things I wanted to show you in the green arrow here is just talk about the things that are really showing some very strong growth and who's driving the growth. I think that's important to understand, because if you understand that the leader group is already there, they're already influenced, what's happening with some of these other things? So for example, internet and websites, 56% top 2 box. General population consumers say that influences my selection of healthy and natural products. grown 6% since 2012. And look at the correlation between that and right across from it, corporate brand website, the importance and the influence of those has grown 61% since 2012. So consumers are really looking for information. They're looking for trusted sources. And it's interesting to me to see, when you look at internet growth, that's being driven by all segments. When you look at television and the influence of television with 14% growth in its influence in these last few years, that's being grown by the sustainable mainstream. And it makes sense because that's what they're used to. They're mainstream in their thinking. They're responding to more ads that we're seeing on TV, more information being published there. But of course, major growth in social media and blogs and the influence of them, absolutely being driven by the middle group. The drifters is where there's a lot of millennials who are hyper-connected today. So there's a lot of opportunity to use all of these methods to engage consumers and keep them really coming back. And one of the things we saw that label reading was really important, and we saw package labels at almost 75% influence in the general population. And what we're really seeing is that across categories, consumers are label reading in a much more stronger way. So it's 6 out of 10 in the US. That's up 5% since 2006. When they're looking at food and beverage products, the first things they're looking for are sugar, followed by calories and fat. Sugar's an issue that this industry brought up. That's now replaced calories and fats. It's the strongest issue that they're watching and tracking. And consumers are also looking for other pertinent information on ingredients and claims that are pertinent to the specific category of what they're purchasing. But this label reading is having a varying level of influence, and it's not just in the US. What we see on a global basis is that it's even higher in emerging countries and emerging economies, Brazil, China, India at 9 out of 10, and South Africa at 7 out of 10. All countries are about a third higher than the US in their label reading. So the idea of your package and what goes on that has become really important, and we need to consider that as an influence. But when we talk to consumers about who they trust and why that's important, it provides trust, and a trusted source of information provides confidence to them in the product, in what they're interested in. And these sources really do vary widely. So for example, and it depends on the category, recommended by a professional is very high, with doctors, hairdressers, dermatologists, particularly influential in baby and infant products or hair care and personal care products, and also even in supplements with physicians. Consumers really do want their doctors to know more. And there are, thank God, more and more doctors who are studying and taking more nutrition classes to be able to talk to their patients about them. And as we also consider, consumers are always talking to their friends, and they call them their granola friends. These are the ones that are perceived as the experts. They're often that low-cost consumer that we've been talking about. They are the consumers that are most often sought out for information. They're educated on various topics. The leader groups are considered to be experts, and you need to engage them as your brand ambassadors. And we mentioned peer groups. As we mentioned influencers, and Carlotta called out one of them, I'd like to call them out to stand up and make your way to the side doors, the ladies from Protect Our Breasts. I really want you to get to know them today. As you're leaving, they're going to have tip cards for you about how you can avoid endocrine disruptors. They're a really important topic, and they're a perfect example. Get to know them and talk to them about what they're doing within their peer groups across college campuses in the US to educate young women of childbearing age. And it's great information that's going to be needed. And they're just one of the types. But we also see it in mommy groups. A lot of consumers talk about, yeah, I heard this in my mommy group, somebody tried it, read this article. These peer groups are extremely important to us, and we need to become engaged with them, and certainly engage with ones like Protect Our Breasts that are more public. And the other thing that provides a trusted source certainly is longevity. The longer I've used a product or the longer my family used a product, the more that I trust it. But the big takeaway here, I think, about sources of influence is to use all these methods to address your consumers. It's not one avenue, it's not one vehicle that's important. All of them are important, and you need to consider that within what you're doing. And also realize that some sources can be more polarizing. You know, sometimes an online source can be the tipping point on a borderline purchase decision, and consumers are using consumer reviews. But they do say that while they provide a little bit more confidence, they don't provide enough education. And they will Google it, they'll go do an internet search for information on what they need, but then they question the validity of that information and how, who is telling them this? Who is the source of it on the internet? So they're starting to be a little bit more careful about it. Consumers are also looking more to retailers, for I think since years and years, decades, that they've been talking about retailers as gatekeepers, expecting them to pre-screen products. I'm so busy, I don't want to have to worry. I want to be able to just come to your store and know that these are all good products. I hope that you do that when you're buying. So they're looking for retailers to be the gatekeepers, and they expect their employees to be knowledgeable, and that's really good for retailers when it works. And when it doesn't work, it's really bad. You can get a really bad reputation, especially as a chain. But in some stores, it's really different. And particularly in mass market or in grocery stores, where there is not consistency. We've been talking all day about consistency and authenticity. When it's not consistently across the store in messaging and merchandising, et cetera, it's perceived as just being big business. You're just hopping on a bandwagon to try and sell me something because you know I'm interested, but do you really care? So your program as a mass market retailer really needs to be more involved and be inclusive of everything. And certainly within social media, social media we all know is really growing in the influence of it. And there's mainstream news stories and exposés that make consumers more aware, but they can also backfire. It can create skepticism. When consumers say, everything causes cancer today, what am I going to believe? Today it's one thing, tomorrow it's another, or today it's good, tomorrow it's bad. So they're looking for consistency, and they're going further to things like online newsletters and online documentaries. And while online documentaries don't get the highest views, they are considered to be one of the best sources of education by consumers. So they're constantly looking for those things. But beware, my last thought in this part is beware, because consumers are not willing to sacrifice. When they're buying healthy, environmentally friendly, sustainable products, they do not want to sacrifice. In fact, 73% say, I don't want to sacrifice quality. And it's interesting when you think about the leader group. Here's one place where the leader group is right there with the general population. They expect you to provide products, which is why I mentioned some categories earlier that need innovation and work within efficacy of the products. Because these consumers are more demanding, we've been able to offer them better products, and we need to continue to do that. There is some price resistance. 61% say they really don't want to pay more. They don't want to sacrifice on price. And a note here is that even with that leader group, 51% of low-cost consumers say the same thing. They're not willing to sacrifice on price, and that's proven out by their shopping patterns. They're shopping all channels. They're looking for best prices. They know what they want. They understand ingredients. They're understanding the mechanics of different categories. So they're really looking for that to be important. And on convenience, it's really different across each category. I mean, it could be convenient to find, to use, to cook, or even just portability. But consumers are looking for more convenience in all of these products. But I want to go back to quality as my one last thought here. And my thought as I was thinking about where I wanted to end on my part of the presentation until we all get together again, is about quality, that as an industry, We've been retraining consumers for decades on what quality really is, and we can't stop. We must continue to do that.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Thanks, everyone, for sticking with us. We're just about done here, just a couple slides, and we'll wrap up with a quick closing thought. So we've talked about leading, connecting, engaging, in my opinion. Engagement, I believe, if we're going to accomplish some of the things that we've talked about today, must be a bigger part of our marketing budget, our marketing plans. Today, the changing marketplace, we must engage influencers. We must think about how we connect and engage with our retailers, nutritionists and dietitians and bloggers and third-party certifiers and influencing consumers in social media. To influence consumers, we must find ways to engage the influencers in the market. So the common thread, I think, in many of the conversations that we've had today, the common opportunity in the marketplace is leadership. Consumers value it. Consumers are asking for it. It helps differentiate our brands, our retailers, and our businesses. It helps us engage consumers while building loyalty and reducing price sensitivity. We need to lead our brands, our products, our stores, our blogs. We need to lead in the market. Our leadership is probably needed now more than ever in the industry. National policy issues have uncertain futures. The time is short for us to act on climate change and some of these other issues. No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, what's clear in this industry right now is the thing that we have control over is the market. The thing that we have control over is how our brands show up in the marketplace. So we can and we need, at this point in time, to use business as a force of good. We can and we need to look to our businesses, to our values, to lead the change that we want in the marketplace. We need to change things in the market at the grassroots level. We need to use commerce, as we discussed earlier, as an agent for change, as an accelerator for change in the marketplace. And we need to leverage our brands to help empower consumers to vote for the change that they want in the marketplace by supporting our brands in the marketplace. As influencers, as experts of trade, as leaders of our industry, it is our responsibility to lead. It's our responsibility to lead on social issues, employment issues, animal welfare issues, environmental issues, on health, and on building more responsible and balanced business practices. The good news is, I believe, that we've shown you today that the marketplace is ready. The marketplace is asking for it. The marketplace is beginning to demand it of us. The trends are pointing in that direction. Mary Ellen's data supports it. It's time for us to lead, and I believe increasingly we will be rewarded for it. So as we wrap up, I want to invite Mary Ellen and Carlotta back up. And what we each wanted to do is just to kind of summarize what we've been talking about today in three pictures, three ideas. So what I'll ask for you guys to do just for a moment is imagine what we could do in a world where business led proactively, where it engaged consumers and it worked to help funnel trillions of dollars spent every year on consumer goods in the United States alone into environmentally and socially constructive actions and investments. Imagine what we could do with the spending power, trillions of dollars of spending power pointed at the very action that we need in the marketplace.
The very high double-digit growth in interest in green versions across many categories indicates a very bright future. Imagine what it could do to change the supply chain from the ground up. Imagine what we could improve.
And imagine if business could always be used as a force for good, with the natural and organic products industry leading the way to do things like reverse global warming, make our food system more just and equitable, and imbue culture and commerce with the vision and values that will ensure a bright, healthy, and prosperous tomorrow for generations to come. And with that, thank you for sticking around. Enjoy Expo and get out on the show floor.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.